So what's it like to run a comic store? Let me tell you some personal thoughts from it. Hey there, this is Perch. I want to do some more videos, and unfortunately, these videos are not ones I can do in the car, which unfortunate for me, probably fortunate for you because you're getting a better audio quality. By the way, what I'm using here, thought I'd throw a slight plug out. This is the new Bose wireless. You put them in your ear. Comes in a nice case. Sound quality is amazing in terms of what I hear. Microphone quality is probably, from what I gather from the advertising, the best you're going to get if you're just talking about a one wireless kind of plug in the ear that you can do while you're driving. I think a lapel mic or something that is wired, there's better out there, and I need to explore that and go down that path because the audio quality is still not where I want it to be. But in terms of listening to music, this is incredible. I can't recommend these enough. It's comfortable in the ear and it just feels really good, and sound quality is great. But that doesn't that doesn't matter to any of you. So, running a comic store. Well, like I said, sorry. There's some other topics here I want to get into, but I need to be stationary in front of a computer with some notes to give you good information. So this is going to be more of kind of a memory, if you will. But I've watched a lot of movies over the years or TV shows where they have like the comic store, and they've had it where. What is that terrible show with the science nerds and they all get super hot girlfriends? What is that? Anyway, that dumb show. There's a comic store in there, and it's always portrayed in a way that is wrong. And you had things like Mallrats, and you've had different shows where you have comic stores or comic events or other things, and it always kind of glorifies the nerd culture of it, if you will. It's like it. You see these scenes of a bunch of people just kind of hanging around the counter, and they're you know talking crazy stuff, and they're watching TV maybe, and they're usually a little bit rude or snarky and everything else. And the reality is both, I think, a lot more boring and a lot more interesting at the same time. So in terms of just raw logistics, comics, you order comics, and I've talked about this before, that the ordering comics form is archaic. And, I had a shop, then didn't have a shop for a while, then had a shop again. And it's funny because I always expect after the break, you come back and like things are magically better. A couple months have passed, or, in case first time, a couple years had passed. And you expect just things to have evolved because everything else has evolved. Especially, throughout the '90s, you had a lot of attention, a lot of buzz in comics before the bust, and at the same time, you did have this growth of the internet. You had websites, you had very basic forms and everything. And then in the 2000s, it got really easy. I mean, things like WordPress and just plugins could do complete ordering and management. And I mean, there's just tons of tools out there, and they're cheap. The struggle for a lot of software developers is everybody races to the bottom at some point. You put up a nice bit of software, and you charge $100 a month for it, and 5 years later you have to charge $10 a month for it, and 5 years after that, Google's giving it away for free just to gain territory. So it's an interesting battle. But in terms of a consumer, or if you're trying to build a business on top of technology, it's never been easier, or should it should be easier. But that's not the case with comics. I mean, the reality is how it was in the way back in the capital city days is not that different from today. I mean, it is, and it isn't. Okay, so I mean, yes, you don't have to, fill out a form and find it in the mail, or at some point you get the wonders of a fax machine that you get to use. I mean, that those days are over. We can do things digitally, but it still is very old school of looking at a list, trying to ascertain what's going on, reading through very dense, poorly formatted text of descriptions that are not helpful, very little to zero filtering and technology. And I don't, I rip on Diamond quite a bit, and I think it's deservedly so. I think they've earned. You have earned this. What is it, the Jonathan Hickman East to West thing? You have earned what is coming to you. I think there is a lot of that. But at the same time, I also know people there who are very nice people. I know sales reps who have been very nice. I know sales reps who have been just monstrous a-holes. And that's part of the problem in a way, is that it's so different. You one shop sales rep is radically different from another shop sales rep, and the rules seem to be different, and there's very little consistency. And if you ask for that consistency, you almost get a little bit of a, what do you want? This is comics. Just order your comics and shut up. Who cares? And it's that who cares attitude that just always irks me. And the reality is, there are absolutely some good people at Diamond. In the tech division, there's some good people. I felt very bad because I screwed up somebody's day like a year ago when I was having a bad day. So that's not an excuse, but I was grouchy. I normally try and take a more even approach to Twitter, as hopefully many people can attest to. But I'm there up on Diamond, and I just happened to notice in an area of the site I don't go to very often, they are talking about their commitment to comic shops, and they have a little slideshow of different shops. And the one that was the first one featured was Xanadu in Seattle. And of course, I know Xanadu. I knew the owner. The owner was a reasonable guy, but for the last at least 5 years, I'd say, of that shop's life, he was unhappy. You ever meet somebody where you're like, you should do something else, and he clearly wanted to do something else. And so when it finally closed, and I saw him about a year after, and he was just happy. And it's like, it's good that you left. Some people, they're into it, and this is the business, and it's in their blood, and they like it, and they can find joy from it. And others, it goes away at some point. It's like a bad marriage where you can try and stay together for the kids, but in the end, you need to walk. And that's what this guy was like. But anyway, I saw the photo of the shop there, and it had been closed for like at least 2-3 years at that point, no longer, I think. Anyway, and I went on Twitter, and I'm like, look at this, crap. Look at here's Diamond's commitment to shops. Yeah, the business is super healthy, and the one they're focusing on their front page closed several years ago. And I got some people in trouble there, and one of the guys from Diamond, is like, hey, I'm really sorry about that. We'll fix it, and he replied to me on Twitter just like, oh, that's embarrassing. We're sorry. I don't even know how he found it. I mean, unless they're just searching for Diamond tags, or somebody had retweeted it and it flew on somebody's radar. But apparently there was some anger and some rage, and I heard somebody gotten in a significant amount of trouble there inside the company in the tech department. The tech department, in many cases, I would say fond things of. I've got to get back to what it's like running a comic shop, but I would say good things about a lot of the people there, even though they're not using the new technology, even though they're not pushing and implementing what they need to, because the tech side is just ridiculously understaffed. I mean, the people there, they have no hope of doing something transformative because there's no money and attention going to that group. If you gave that group just two additional smart people, they could probably completely transform a key part of the business, and shops would be happier, and the relationships would be better, and everything, and that would lead to more cash. So hey, owners of Diamond, invest in your technology. Jesus, I mean, anyway, coming down off that ledge, I think running a comic shop, it's funny because there's the moments of mind-numbing pain, and that's usually ordering comics. It's usually trying to feed through the solicits. It's where you feel, I would say, most bitter and angry at the publishers. And I think if somebody took the time, and God, nobody do this, and you looked at my tweets and kind of the emotion that comes out, over the months, you could probably track the same time of the month, let's say, of ordering the comics, where I am just pissed. It's my time of the month of just ordering comics and having to look through solicits and having to weed through all that. It's numbing, and it's terrible, and it's not just the distributor's fault. It's also the publishers who do very little to help you understand what's going on. I mean, have you ever been on Twitter and you've seen some of the creators say, "Hey, don't miss FOC," and you may not, like, well, I don't even know what that is, and it's final order cutoff is what that is. And it's basically the creator kind of letting you know that, hey, if you want this book and you want to put in some additional orders, or you want to up your order, whatever, you need to do that now, because it's not uncommon for a book to be solicited very poorly. And I'll get more to that in a second, but basically solicited very poorly. And then, some news comes out about the book, like the artist or the hook or something that makes it more popular. Good example recently is Marauders #1, where the original solicitations just didn't work for a lot of people. It didn't catch people's eye. And then a couple of panels went by and some information went on it's too late by then actually, but in Powers of X or somewhere. But anyway, interest grew in the book, I guess is what I'm saying. And then, there's this tiny window where retailers could put more orders in. They could basically up their orders, and they needed to. Marauders sold out pretty heavily because a lot of retailers ordered light on it because the original look of the book was it didn't look like a big seller. So anyway, if you've seen the creators do this, I mean, it's good. On one hand, I say thank you to the creators for helping put a little bit more information out into the field. But I also think, and this is something that I think the diversity in comics guy has ripped on the creators for. But sometimes creators grouch about, what business is it where I have to market my own stuff? Where I have to do the marketing job in addition to the creator job. And on one hand, I agree with Richard, who made a comment of like, you're trying to sell your book. You're always hustling. You should be a salesman. That's a lame thing to grouch about. That's pathetic that you're grouching. I agree with that point. I do. I think you got to hustle and be your own agent. The other half of that, though, I would say, which was why the creators often complain, is the creators feel compelled to have to remind the shops that they need to order for FOC or these other moments. And they're having to do that because the solicitations from the publisher or for the distributor are so freaking poor that they have to inform the retailers of just basic logistics of how to get their book. And while I agree that the creators should market and should push, I think that's it's not a little, it's a lot ridiculous that the creators have to put themselves in the shoes of having to hype FOCs and other things for their own books. I think that should be just part and parcel of what the solicitations are in the first place. But anyway, you read through all this, you try and, using a magic 8 ball or numbers or whatever kind of filing system you have, you try and determine what kind of comics you're going to buy. That's a terrible time. I've met zero honest shops who say that process is good. There's a couple out there. The what Big Bang Comics will talk about the joy of doing this, and that whole, I don't want to. Well, I will. I mean, not to throw shade on that shop, but to throw shade on that shop. The shenanigans that those guys get up to on Twitter and other groups, and just it's just collective eye roll from nearly every shop, every other shop. Whenever those people wander into the scene, there is I think, or I was down at one of the cons and um, they came up and like the word jackass was used more times than I've ever heard it used in like a 2 minute moment. But anyway, that's the bad part. The good part, I would say, the fun part is on Wednesdays, or not, sorry, not Wednesdays. But comics are sold on Wednesdays, but when the comics come in, which for me is often Tuesdays, some people it's earlier. Just it's kind of the nature of the game. Um, that is both a fun and terrifying time, and I would say it, if I'm being honest, more fun than terrifying. What's the fun part? Well, you're hauling out a bunch of comics out of the box, and you get to read them early, and that's cool, and you get to see them all. And there's something, even the lousy books look more magical when they're coming out of a box and there's a ton of them. You got dozens and dozens of comics, or hundreds of comics in some cases. You're pulling out these big stacks and you're figuring out where they go and you're putting them in the boxes. And even the really crappy comics are better in that moment. They're just, everything is new and it's fresh and it's awesome. And that's the really cool part. And it's also a cool part because invariably, at least once a week, you have at least one comic that surprises you, where you pick it up and you're like, oh, there's a genuine surprise, either a reveal or some cool moment, or just something works out better, or the cover art, which didn't look good in like a tiny little digital form or reprint form, looks really cool in real life when you're touching it. Or there's things where that's a fun moment. The terrifying part is the lottery of what did Diamond screw up in the boxes that I got. And that's, where did the comics were stacked by a insane sociopath monkey, and they're sideways, or you got cover folds, you got weird paper that's printed over, or you ordered, or you're like the most terrifying part is like you go through the box and you're like, all right, and you get to the end, and you're like, wait a minute, where's Batman? You know, and you're, you're like, was Batman supposed to come out this week? And then you have a fun little, usually about a, I don't know, 10-minute little adventure where you try and figure out if Batman just didn't ship for some odd reason, and then you're looking at your invoice and you're like, what the hell? And then you're trying to figure out where to where to go, and that's the terrifying moment, because every time the boxes come in, there's always a happiness and a trepidation kind of simultaneously that zooms in, because there's a good chance something is screwed up in there. And is it that they shorted you the 3 issues of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, or did they short you the 6th issue of House of X? Where did they screw up? you're gonna you're gonna kind of see, and then comes the adventure of trying to figure out where your comics went, and you're mailing people, did you get shorted too, or hey, where's this, and just that, and then you start to get like the conspiracy theory going in your head of like, hey, I'll bet the big guys didn't have this problem, or and I'll say with this, the big guys do have these problems. Every I am 100% sure that there is more quality control and checks on, say, Midtown Comics or Mile High or any of those. There is more checks from Diamond to make sure they are getting what they're supposed to get. But as you know, I have friends at Mile High, and they have the same problem. Not to the same extent. Certainly, I think that the smaller people do. It should be no surprise. Unfortunately, smaller people get the short end of the stick. But Mile High, they also get problems, and then they have to deal with it. And if you're bigger, everything works a little bit better. Chances are somebody's watching over your order a little bit closer, and chances are when you complain that they're going to hustle faster for you than the smaller guys. And chances are if you need to do reorders, that process will be less painful for you. Chances are your rep won't randomly change one week for no apparent reason. There's lots of little things going on, but that this video is rambling on and on and on. But I kind of warned at the beginning this is going to be a ramble, so I'm gonna wrap it up here pretty soon. But there's more to say. I guess I thought this would be a quick little video, and it's not. It's going to round out about 20 minutes, which is longer than I usually like it. But comic shops, I mean, it's fun and it's boring at the same time. And you're running a business, and I haven't even gotten into, for me, often the worst part, which is dealing with state or federal taxes, getting the various your lease, and just all that minutia. The sudden discovery that your landlord or your person is going to raise rates for no apparent reason, or some drunk teenager rammed their car into the sign for the mini mall you're at, and now everybody's going to have to pay for that. And it just, there's lots of that kind of headaches that go on. But the best part, and this is a good place to end this at least ramble, is that you have you get to meet people who are coming in who want to hear a story. You get to be, even though you're not the creator, you get to be a storyteller. And this is where I do wish more creators would reach out to comic fans. This is where I'll use a direct example. Gail Simone, um, you know, Al Ewing. I'm blocked by both those individuals. I was part of a blockchain for one, and I think I insulted Chuck Wendig by putting his words in a Captain America panel, and that ticked off Simone with the other. Um, but both those people have been good to shops in the past. So I want to give them credit for that. They have helped. I wish they would help more. And I would say, I'm not your enemy to both. I'm not your enemy. No matter what I do on Twitter, I'm not your enemy. And I would like for the creators to realize that the comic shop owners, the employees, the people working there, they are also storytellers. Yeah, you're making the comic, but those people behind the counter who are meeting people and bringing them in, the people who are coming in want to have an experience. They want to read a comic. Some people just silently want to pick up their stuff, pay, and leave. Others want to come in and kind of inquire about what's working and what's not. Others have questions about the issue they read, and they want to explore those questions with somebody. They want to have some human connection. The person who runs the shop has to understand all those elements, and in many cases are just as important as the creator in terms of being a storyteller and connecting that experience. Now, it's true. The comic shop wouldn't exist without the creators, so obviously they're critical to the role. They are. But the comic shop is also selling those comics, and they're keeping people interested in those comics, often just as much as the comics. The relationship people have with their local comic shop is often what keeps them coming back for decades, even after they've lost interest in a lot of comics. So that's the great part, getting to meet those people, having those conversations, freeing up, being open to different ideas. You have to be. If you're going to sell things in a shop, you have to be open to different perspectives. If you're not, your shop won't last long. But in doing so, you get to experience a lot more than you do otherwise, and I think that's amazing. And that's the part I love. So at now 21 odd minutes, I'm going to wrap this up. Sorry, I'm very sorry for the length. Who will make it to the end of this? 5 of you. Congratulations. If you do, put in the comments, I made it to the end. That would be that would be swell. Like I said, like, comment, share, ask questions. I'll do this again, and I promise, I'll keep it shorter. But thanks for listening.